On August 8th, 2022, the nation learned for the first time in history a former president's home was searched by federal agents acting lawfully. It is the kind of news that just hit like a thunderclap across the nation and really the world. Unprecedented details still sinking in.
Nothing like this has ever happened before, and we don't know how this ends.
Breaking news courtesy of a brand new statement that just crossed from Donald Trump. His home in Mar-a-Lago is, quote, under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents.
Stunning news overnight, an FBI raid on the home of a former president.
Search and seizure. The FBI descends on former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home.
We have a breaking Fox News alert. The FBI has raided former President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago.
Federal law enforcement authorities would have had to go to a judge and bring to that judge a request for a search warrant.
We begin this hour with one word: unprecedented.
Today, we are in uncharted territory. The FBI search at Mar-a-Lago has no parallel in American history.
That's all true, and that's all sinking in. The first ever search of a former president's home, setting what is today something we didn't have until yesterday, a new legal precedent in America. That matters for the law. It's captivating many, many people all over the country, no matter how you get your news, newspaper, television, internet, phone alerts, social media. This is the big story. It upends Trump's current situation. That obviously matters to him and to our politics and to a thicket of legal implications that we're covering for you tonight. We've been working hard on our broadcast and a special report coming up later and some very special guests. But let me tell you this up front. At the broadest level, this development is the clearest, starkest, most physical indication that the United States is still governed by the rule of law, that Donald Trump is not above it, and that confidential independent investigations are clearly continuing and sometimes escalating that involve him and some of his conduct as president. Now, I say physical because it was armed federal agents who took that judicially approved search warrant, crossing through the gates of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, going through the files, going through what is both his property, allegedly going through his safe, and also going through property that he may have had in his possession but was not his, pursuing secret government documents that Donald Trump was reportedly holding after he had flouted what were, and this is important, flouted binding legal demands to return them. We're a full 20 months or so after Trump left the White House after his attempted coup failed, and he was still apparently holding on to these documents. There was also the very grave step of a top DOJ counter-intel official who already had gone down previously to confront Trump's team back in the spring about reportedly these materials that he had taken improperly, possibly illegally, from the White House. On Monday, agents spent most of the day conducting the search with, we're told, one Trump lawyer present. None of this incredible, unprecedented story leaked out in any way in advance that we've heard. Indeed, the first public disclosure about this search came from someone who, of course, can lawfully explain it and publicize it. But if you want to call it a leak, the leak came from Donald Trump himself. The FBI had quietly, secretly, properly coordinated this operation, as well as the particulars of what happens when a former president who has lawful Secret Service protection and other legal protections and retinue of guards and other things that are his under the law as a former official makes him different than other potential people who are searched. So the FBI also quietly coordinated with the Secret Service who were on the site. That was a few hours before the search. And reports suggest Trump basically knew before the Biden White House, where staff heard the news, the New York Times reports, like everyone else, on Twitter, online, in the public news. Donald Trump was in New York yesterday during this time, where he apparently wrote out that statement, which broke the news in a way. He was seen leaving Trump Tower just last night. And he is known for trying to outrun and outpace the law. We all know that. You're watching the news, you know that. Donald Trump tries to outrun the law, figuratively, literally, however you want to put it, in a combination. And this story certainly has a long path. The hunt for these documents began with the material that Donald Trump took from Washington down to Florida. He also faces separate civil and criminal probes in New York, Washington, Georgia. Now we know a judge in Florida approving a search for Trump's Florida home for these materials that now have been taken from Mar-a-Lago and are going back to Washington. Whew. Right? I'll tell you, it's like a lot of miles logged. But this is still about the law, no matter how many places you try to go with all the stuff. It was Kenny Rogers who once explained, you can hide out for a while, but you can't outrun the long arm of the law. Sean Carter hit the same theme, how the criminal mindset involves running and secrecy. He recounted a thug under a lamppost while he got his hand closed, crack in the palm, watching the long arm of the law. Now, hiding crack, like hiding stolen state secrets, is a crime. It just is. That's a legal fact. And watching the long arm of the law for long enough, well, most people do find out the law catches up. And the law is not supposed to care how long you've been running, how long you got away with it, how long you made the long arm of the law maybe stretch. And during that time, you might have felt like a powerful, furtive, effective criminal outrunning the law. The law doesn't care about that, and it doesn't care who you are. That's the whole point. Turning now to our special report on the precedent for what just went down. When you hear about this search of a former president's home, before you know anything else, you know the feds must be confident here. They didn't just get the required judicial approval. They must be certain that the law is on their side. So, why is that? Well, the answer is actually very clear, and it includes some additional bad news for Trump. Whether he's learned about this yet or not, you're going to learn about it right now if you stay with me, because this body of law on state secrets is tough. And the DOJ has a history of being tough, of prosecuting officials in this very area, even if they previously had high security clearances or commanded battalions or even ran the CIA. The Justice Department has just proven time and time again, because of the nature of the issues here, Andrew Weissman referred to some of this, that the DOJ, are willing to pursue and prosecute and indict and sometimes convict and incarcerate people who were even recent colleagues atop the government or served in administrations with them or were in either party, or even people who have been viewed by many as wartime heroes. Bottom line, there is a case history here, and it shows that serious people have been in serious legal trouble for even less than this. That's the legal backbone for the dramatic search and raid of Donald Trump's home. High-level government officials have been prosecuted for this related issue of whether you are mishandling classified documents or spilling state secrets or doing anything, especially after you were in office, to endanger the United States. This is serious stuff. So let's get into it. Take Sandy Berger, National Security Advisor to President Clinton. He was in charge of all kinds of national security and intelligence issues while in office, as I emphasized, had that valid role. But after he left that post, just like Donald Trump did, then you're a citizen again. So Mr. Berger lost any legal claim to those top secret materials for the most part, and he was indicted and ultimately convicted for doing something that would have been legal when he had the job. He basically grabbed some classified documents secretly out of the National Archives. This was back in 2003. And his reason was, he said, also fair, because he was trying to prepare himself for important government testimony. Then, when caught, Berger at first claimed it was all some kind of accident.
Today, his lawyer says Berger set them aside to read later and accidentally carried them out.
But unfortunately, and he's admitted, it was an inadvertent mistake. He shouldn't have done it, but he did mistakenly take the document.
The innocent explanation is the most likely one, particularly given the facts involved.
That was a big deal. He was a big figure in sort of Democratic security circles. It did not end there. Berger busted as that whole defense fell apart. What Clinton said there didn't prove to be right. An investigation found he actively hid the papers, stuffed them in his pockets several times to furtively get them out of the archives, and also destroyed some with scissors. He admitted all of this. Now, what happens when you do that? Well, There have already been reports about Donald Trump in the White House trying to destroy documents in a toilet or a fireplace. The Times has this photo relating to this happening inside a White House toilet. But Mr. Berger ultimately cooperated, something that we haven't seen as reported in the top of the broadcast about much of what has happened at Mar-a-Lago. Berger cooperated, he pled guilty, and that led to an arrangement where he was fined $50,000. He lost his security clearance. He was under 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service. So it was real punishment at the end of the road, although he did avoid jail time with that cooperation. Now, let me tell you something else. There's so much cynicism these days, and there's so much trolling and lying designed to just sort of chip away at the reality in front of you. And yet today, the reality is that the independent justice system is working, that it is apparently nonpartisan, that it is being overseen by judges as it is supposed to. Now, you know who one of the top prosecutors was who was overseeing this very case, who announced that Berger plea deal? His name is Mr. Chris Wray. At the time, he was at DOJ. Now he's ascended to FBI director because Donald Trump picked him for that post. It is Mr. Wray who has been directly hands-on in these key decisions. So he knows exactly how this works, and anyone who wants to bring it up or try to bring in history and politics will have to deal with the fact that Mr. Wray is a Trump appointee who has previously been assertive in this classified area of the law against Democrats. And now it's his FBI that conducted this raid in this classified area of the law against a former Republican president. Now, there's a prosecutor here who thinks there was enough evidence to warrant the search of Mar-a-Lago. Reuters reporting this raid would be approved, of course, the way it works, by Mr. Wray. So all of this is the context. That's just one case. Let me tell you about another one I bet many people remember. David Petraeus. He was, of course, a military veteran, considered a war hero, broadly popular in many ways, and he was CIA director, also served in both parties. But ultimately, he had to plead guilty because he had basically shared or leaked classified information with a biographer with whom he had a relationship, and then later lied about it. He told the FBI he didn't give the information out. And in that case, which was very heavy, jail time was on the table. It went to court, as I mentioned, because of that deal. Judge, in that case, ultimately fined Petraeus $100,000, which was higher than the prosecutors asked for, citing the seriousness of the offense. Mr. Petraeus, though, for reasons mentioned, including his service to country, did not actually go to prison, and others viewed it as all, even still, too lenient.
David Petraeus, who once also headed up the CIA, was sentenced today to 2 years probation and fined $100,000.
Lawyers are citing it as an example of, hey, well, if he got off with that, our guy should get off with a similarly lenient sentence.
So that was going on then. And remember, whether you think that that was a lot of punishment or there could have been more, even that was more than a home search. You had the reputational damage, you had consequences, you have probation in one of those cases. And here you have the ongoing apparent alleged defiance by this person who's a former government official, Donald Trump, of the DOJ. But the bottom line is, and you see it in these cases, no one's above the law, especially not the people who are actually granted these extra powers in office. In other words, as you think about Donald Trump last night complaining about this out of New York, there's this conspiracy theory that crops up every time with these problems where you say, oh, well, Donald Trump and these people think that somehow they are being treated differently. They need people to think that. The history shows something else. The DOJ is confident because it's gone at these cases before against war heroes, against veterans of both parties, because, and I'm sorry I have to say this out loud, but it doesn't matter who you are and what position you had. If you are endangering the state secrets of the United States government, you are putting people's lives at risk. If you're doing it when you've been on notice and you're doing it potentially illegally, then yes, that, as has happened before, can be enforced as a felony. We are joined now by Michael Cohen. He is the host of the Mea Culpa podcast. He's a principal with Crisis X, and he has walked us through so many of these issues here. Welcome back.
Good to see you, Ari.
You hear that type of criticism. That was about a search on you. Now the search has hit home in a big way for Donald Trump. What is he doing here? Did he misplay this? And what would be in his safe?
Well, he definitively misplayed it. It's definitely karma boomerang. He didn't believe anything that he was saying about me. It wasn't about me. It's always about him. And that's what he now has to contend with. So it's funny that you asked me about what was in the safe. Today, I probably received about 24 plus phone calls from journalists asking, what do you think was in the safe? And I think everybody should sort of stop and let's just allow the process to go forward. They don't want to hear what I truly believe is in the safe, which is the same thing that you would have in the safe, right? Which would be your family documents. It would be the trust. It would probably be some birth certificates. Now, Donald is a licensed firearm owner, so he may have that in there. I also believe that there was probably a lot of cash in there because he had Woolman Rink, Lasker Rink, he had the carousel, he had the food court, and so on. So that's something I know the district attorney and the attorney general looking at very significantly. But they want to hear things like, Stormy's pink panties or the P-tape autographed by Vladimir Putin or maybe some naked photos of Melania. That's sort of the salaciousness.
You're talking about speculation. You're not saying you have any view in that. Here's Eric Trump, who you worked with all these people.
Yes,
Here's Eric Trump last night.
My father never got so much as a speeding ticket in his life. My father always kept clippings, press clippings. He would have, newspaper articles, pictures, notes from us. He had boxes, all right, when he moved out of the White House. How about the Benghazi scandals? You want to talk about, scandals that were never investigated?
You have counseled this person, Donald Trump.
Yes.
We've heard from experts tonight that this might just be about the potential illegal use of these documents. What do you think was his mindset? What was he telling his current lawyers, based on your understanding of how he thinks, when they would have definitely told him the DOJ means business, you got to give it all back?
Yeah, first of all, when the feds come, you know that it's never a good thing, and there's generally going to be an indictment in jail that follows. The feds don't make that mistake. They end up having the ability to not just seize the documents that are in that warrant, but there's always additional documents and additional information that they gather. Eric's an idiot. And, to sit and to listen to Eric talk about it, oh, my dad had clippings and so on. Listen, I promise you that the feds did not raid for the very first time and by the way, it's not the home. We have to all be clear about that.
The property.
It's not. It's the property. He's not even supposed to be living there. But then again, nothing matters to him as it relates to the law.
But you and I know, any decent lawyer would say, the DOJ is taking this assertively. We're counseling you to turn this stuff back over. I mean, they left with stuff, according to the reports we have. What does he say in that moment? He just doesn't believe that this is going to get worse?
No, he does not. He is such a narcissistic sociopath that he truly believes he's above the law, that he's going to be able to beat any of this. And he just doesn't seem to understand. Documents do not belong to him. I believe it's like 18 USC 2071. You're not permitted to destroy documents. You're not permitted to take documents. They don't belong to him. Now, do I think some of the documents may be love letters from Kim Jong-un, or it could be a letter from the Queen and he's just holding it so that he could brag to somebody at Mar-a-Lago while chowing down on a burger and ice cream? Absolutely.
Can I there's a smaller point here. It's not as important as the earlier stuff, but I will ask you this. He is the ultimate declassifying authority. He did have 4 years to learn the job, and it is a big job. But had he figured out by January 19th that he could have declassified virtually all, if not all, of this stuff, by declassifying it, he then would have been able to legally take it back to Florida.
Yes.
I know I'm pushing it here, Michael. We've had these conversations before. But am I to understand, as someone who just tries to make sense of the news, that by the end of the term, he didn't know that he could use that power that way to avoid this entire search?
Absolutely. They were busy thinking who they were going to pardon for money. I mean, who knows what's really in that safe? Who knows what's in the information that the FBI now has their hands on? And I said this, and I say gleefully, because everything that he did to people like myself, it's now a karma boomerang. He's now experiencing the full effect of the federal government and the weaponization, as he likes to call it, against him. He is the ultimate weaponizer. I have a book that's going to be coming.
That's the final question. It's not legal. It's human. I got 40 seconds. Yesterday, he went through a version of part of what you went through. What do you think about him going through what you and your family went through to some degree?
Look, at the end of the day, it will ultimately show that Donald Trump committed a plethora of crimes to which he is responsible for, and the American people want him held accountable.